Portals Numerology course, Module 2A, Grids, Arrows and Missing Numbers using the birth date. This module explains the grids, arrows and missing numbers using the birth date. The grid. Considered by some to be the oldest recorded process of divination, Chinese numerology was said to have been incorporated in teachings by the Pythagoreans, with the arrows resulting from lined-up numbers across the grid being called the arrows of Pythagoras. While there are different methods of filling the grid with the birth numbers, I was taught the placements in the grid above. When filling your own grid in your workbook, you place the numbers, including repeating numbers, from your birth date in the appropriate spaces. Here's my grid as an example, using the numbers from my birth date 951966. This also makes it easier to see your missing and repeating numbers. As discussed in the previous module, I have 2 number 6 and 2 number 9, along with 1 number 1 and 1 number 5. If you have any zeros in your birth date, you can write them underneath your grid if you like, although I don't count them. According to Chinese numerology, the more zeros you have in your birth date, the more karmic lessons you will have. However, I was taught that the karmic lessons are found in the name, which we will discuss soon. Once you have your grid filled in, you can assess the missing numbers. Check out the following section to see what each missing number means. Note, don't worry too much about any missing numbers if they appear elsewhere in your chart. For example, someone who is missing a 2 in their birth date and grid might be a 2 destiny. However, if they have a 2 karmic lesson, to be discussed in the next module, they might find that they have issues with working cooperatively with others or dealing with sensitivity and depression. Missing numbers. Number 1. Issues with communication and a lack of understanding when it comes to other points of view. Learning to listen is essential for getting along with others, and this is a hard lesson for those missing the number 1 in their chart. When it comes to business endeavours or creative projects, these people sometimes feel that they only have one leg to stand on. Number 2. A lack of intuition and sensitivity is indicated by the missing number 2, so these people can be impatient. They tend to blame others for their mistakes or at least justify them with excuses rather than admit that they're at fault. Learning to trust their intuitions and developing patience is key to overcoming these issues. Number 3. Underestimating their skills and abilities leads to a lack of confidence for those missing the number 3 in their charts. They also tend to put themselves down a lot, and they are easily distracted, having difficulty with thinking logically. They need to learn how to accept themselves, warts and all, and develop focus to avoid being distracted. Number 4. These people do not like hard work and avoid it wherever possible. They have difficulties with working to a routine and they lack motivation. Those with a missing 4 do not like Mondays and have a lot of trouble dragging themselves out of bed in the morning. Learning discipline and enjoying the fruits of their labour will help with these issues. Number 5. Lacking direction. These people have difficulty with setting goals, since they lack the drive to do so. Needing constant motivation to complete tasks, they often need to be prodded along by others. Setting realistic goals and seeing their projects through to completion will give them a sense of achievement. Number 6. Avoiding responsibility. These people need to learn how to be more caring and giving. Issues with relating to one or both of their parents are a constant strain, and they tend to hide their own feelings to avoid entanglements or embarrassment. They tend to have relationship problems, so they need to learn how to be more open and honest. Number 7. Often inconsiderate of others' feelings, those with a missing 7 can tend to be uncomfortable when left on their own, and they lack interest in spirituality or have issues with faith or trust. They need to learn to relax around other people and to be more considerate of others' misfortunes. Number 8. Those with a missing number 8 tend to have financial difficulties. They are careless and gullible, which can lead to losing money or personal items. Impulsive spending is also an issue, and they tend to act before thinking. They need to be more frugal and careful. Number 9. These people can be aloof and they lack compassion, turning a blind eye to the needs of others. They lack the ability to see things to the end and often leave a mess behind them, expecting others to clean up after them. Learning to be more understanding of the plights of others can help with developing compassion. Task 10. In your workbook, write a few paragraphs about your missing numbers. Does anything seem familiar? Depending on how far you've evolved, you might have overcome these tendencies. If so, write a little about how the lack of certain numbers affected you in the past. The arrows. The full arrows in the grid, which houses all the numbers from the birth date, show the emphasis in particular characteristics, where all 3 numbers are present in the arrow. The arrows can be vertical, horizontal, or diagonal. The empty arrows in the grid are where there's a lineup of 3 empty cells, and they show the lack of a particular characteristic. Make sure to include arrows for missing numbers in a row, as per the following example. Using myself again as an example, here's the full arrow in my grid. As you can see, I only have 1, which is the arrow of determination. Not every birth date will have an arrow in their grid, which is perfectly fine. People with no arrows are said to be more flexible when adapting to situations. It's interesting to note that everyone born between 1000 and 1999 had a number 1 in their birth date. However, those born from 2000 to 2999 will all have a 2. Task 11. Write the numbers from your birth date into the grid in your workbook, making sure to include the repeating numbers in the appropriate cells if you have them. Then include the arrows for the numbers in a row, vertical, horizontal, and/or diagonal, as well as any row with missing numbers. The full arrows explained. Any arrow falling on 3 aligned cells with numbers in the grid is called a full arrow. The arrow of planning. These people love making lists and planning things since they have analytical minds that love organization. They can sometimes ignore the little details and tend to be so absorbed that they find it hard to relate to others, and some are even selfish or distant. These people have a deep affinity for freedom and independent thinking. The arrow of willpower. Self-control and willpower make large projects and responsibilities a breeze for those with this arrow. Obstacles and difficult tasks are easily tackled, and they seem to overcome seemingly impossible situations, since they've had to be self-reliant for a long time. Individual in nature, they can hurt others' feelings without knowing it, and they can be stubborn. They need to learn to let go sometimes to avoid burnout. The arrow of activity. These people love to be constantly active and involved in things, especially anything physical. They have a love for being with people and talking up a storm, since they tend to be extroverted. They are so active, in fact, that they don't know when to stop and end up in an exhausted heap due to their over-enthusiasm. These people loathe boredom and can rarely sit still, so they love the outdoors where they can have plenty of space. The arrow of determination. Persistent, ambitious, enterprising and patient, Those with the arrow of determination will stick through to the end in almost any endeavour, and they usually have tunnel vision when it comes to their goals. They tend to get stuck in the mud, creating rules for themselves that are rigid and sometimes impractical. These people usually have a bad temper, so they need to learn to be more adaptable and develop understanding for others. The arrow of practicality. These people are intensely practical and skilled, with a love for making things with their hands. They are usually physically strong, healthy, and down to earth, which makes them easygoing. These people don't mind working long hours to achieve what they're passionate about. They are anchored in the material world and are usually successful due to a well-grounded idea of reality. The arrow of emotional balance. Balanced emotions and sensitivities make these people highly spiritual, with an artistic flair. They are compassionate, intuitive, wise, and very much in touch with theirs and others' feelings. They are warm and nurturing, which makes it easy to connect with other people on a deep level. Many with this arrow have gone through a lot in their lives, which is why they can empathize so easily. The arrow of mentality. This arrow denotes good judgment, intelligence, and a love for learning. These people are creative and have excellent memories, although they are less practical and emotional. Intellectual snobbery is a bad trait of this arrow, since these people have a love of sophistication and tend to look down their noses at those that they consider beneath them. They need to develop empathy towards others. The arrow of spirituality. These people are deeply spiritual or psychic and may be interested in the occult. They develop strong faith and have an aura of serenity about them. An avid love of music is associated with this arrow, and they are artistically inclined, with a kind and loving soul that attracts others to them. Loyal and compassionate, they sometimes ignore their own needs for the sake of others. The empty arrows explained. Arrows across 3 aligned cells without numbers in the grid are called empty arrows. The arrow of frustration, missing 4, 5, and 6. People with this arrow tend to be frustrated often in their lives, with themselves, others, situations and circumstances. The problem is they tend to create their own messes and wonder what went wrong. They will have more setbacks than others in their lives and often feel like they're spinning their wheels and going nowhere. Learning to accept that going against the flow is detrimental to positive outcomes will be useful to them. The arrow of hesitation, missing 7, 8, and 9. These people tend to be unrealistically idealistic, expecting magical outcomes without proper planning or putting in the hard work. They also expect others to come to their aid, but they have difficulty accepting guidance and seem to never learn their lessons. They lack motivation and willpower, so they are often disappointed and give up easily. Developing the art of discipline should help them greatly. The arrow of impracticality, missing 1, 4, and 7. This placement is only applicable to those born after the year 2000 or before the year 1000 due to the number 1 missing before and after these periods. Highly susceptible to being lost in a dream world, these individuals are impractical since they lack the ability to plan or act. These people tend to be introverted and they are often artistic, with fantastic goals and ideas that never seem to manifest. They need to be better at planning and taking action. The arrow of hypersensitivity, missing 2, 5, and 8. These people are terribly sensitive, finding it difficult to deal with others' emotions. They are often drained by high-powered people and easily hurt, so they tend to withdraw into themselves. While they are very loving and caring of others, they need to develop a strong sense of self to make sure they don't become enmeshed in other people's problems. They are prone to psychism and have finely tuned spiritual senses. The arrow of poor memory, missing 3, 6, and 9. These people have poor memories and they lack the concentration to absorb new information. In their younger years, they struggled at school and were easily bored, needing constant stimulation. While they may have been slow learners earlier on, they do tend to catch up later in life, making up for what they didn't achieve. The arrow of indecision, missing 1, 5 and 9. While these people have great ideas and imagination, they lack the self-confidence to carry them out and find it difficult to make decisions. Often taking on huge projects and tasks, they end up being overwhelmed and give up prematurely. These people have ignored or forgotten hobbies and interests due to a lack of practical application and motivation. Working on their self-confidence and taking small steps can help. The arrow of skepticism, missing 3, 5 and 7. Needing to see things before they'll believe them, these individuals can also suffer from cognitive dissonance, the perception of contradictory information even when faced with the facts. They stubbornly cling onto what they believe and deny any piece of information that takes them out of their comfort zone. They can also be obsessive and anxious in relationships. Learning to be more open to different points of view can help. Task 12. Write a few paragraphs in your workbook about your arrows, both full and empty if you have them. What are your impressions? Did you not have any arrows? If so, do you feel that you are more flexible and adaptable?